And without meiosis, you would not get evolution beyond a very simple stage in which creatures can reproduce asexually just by dividing, or in some other way asexually. But meiosis is an unimaginably complex process. And listen to John Maynard Smith. Now, I have a genuine admiration and respect for John Maynard Smith. He was not a bit like Richard Dawkins. Much more respectful, much more willing to face difficulties. And this is what he says, again, in that interview from 2001. It is genuinely difficult to come up with an explanation for the evolution of meiosis, an immensely complex process. We can only guess. Now, Maynard Smith is a genuine expert, and he is freely admitting that he has no idea how meiosis happens. You can see there the one cell dividing into four, not into two, which the other process of mitosis would be doing. It has to divide into four in order to reduce by half the number of chromosomes. What happens first is the DNA doubles up, but there is this, and the chromosomes come and lie together in pairs. But there is this amazing swapping of information, this amazing inbuilt capacity for variety, for variation, just exactly what Linnaeus and Mendel were thinking about and looking for, the capacity for variation. And then there's the mechanism by which the chromosomes get drawn to the poles of the cell, and the whole thing, you see, the DNA is supposed to be the information carrying a part of the cell, sending out the messages, but it needs these messages to happen. This whole process must be governed by some kind of code, by some kind of information. Well, Maynard Smith freely admits he has no idea how that could have evolved. The process itself has had to evolve, you see. But it gets worse for neo-Darwinism, because meiosis has been known about for a long time, decades and decades. But now, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in where the field is at the moment. I most definitely am not that, but I invite you to go and look it up for yourself. The amount of information coming out is explosive. I doubt if anyone knows all of it, and I certainly don't know much. But I know enough to be astonished that the mechanisms which produce variety have proved to be extensive but very complex, and they all involve existing genes. Now, remember that Darwin himself could see that that created an issue. Variation that was there before was no good to him. He had to have new information. But all the systems for variety that we've got, these are some fields dealing with this kind of thing. Symbiogenesis, that would have to be critiqued a lot, but it's where two organisms combine, essentially. Hybridogenesis, where they combine in a different sense as hybrids. Horizontal gene transfer, particularly in bacteria, they can transfer the genes amongst the gene pool, amongst themselves, between each other. Those are mechanisms by which genetic material can be combined or transferred between cells and create variety. They do not explain how the genetic material arose in the first place, nor how the mechanisms themselves arose. That's the thing, you see. We've had a genetic code, but the genetic code is not in itself not going to be enough to explain how these things happen. I was at a lecture given by Professor Steve Jones, who, as you probably know, is a leading geneticist and certainly one the media deal with a lot. And the lecture was entitled, "Why Creationism is Wrong and Evolution is Right." And the theme, the first few minutes were talking about how ridiculous creationists are. And then he moved into talking about how the HIV virus has changed. And very interesting lecture. He's a good communicator, knew a lot. I was sitting there thinking, well, when's he going to talk about something to do with creationism. So then it finished, and they asked for questions. So I put my hand up, and they were very pleased that someone had put their hand up and asked me what my question was. So I came clean. I said, I'm a creationist. I said, it's a very interesting lecture, but it has nothing to do with the creation-evolution debate, because creationists don't doubt that viruses can change. In fact, once you've got genes, or whatever viruses have got, any amount of change could happen, but it doesn't tell you where the genes came from in the first place. So that's the question that evolutionists got to answer. Where did the genes come from in the first place? Do you know what his answer was? Oh, we've no idea. Absolutely no idea. So, but you see, that is the whole point. Once you have a complex genetic mechanism, if you swap it around, chop it, recombine it, chop it about, insert bits here, take bits out there, yes, you're going to get variety. That's not the point. The point is, where did it all come from in the first place? And then there is epigenetics, which is a term referring to processes which cause changes in gene expression by mechanisms other than changes in the underlying DNA sequence. Now, you see, that shouldn't, under standard neo-Darwinism, that shouldn't happen. It implies there are other codes, other information, or information stored differently than just in the straightforward reading of the DNA. And there's a lot of evidence coming out that that is true. This is a simplified, just to give you the gist of it, we now have an epigenetic code, well, probably loads of them actually, as well as a genetic code to account for. Codes sitting on top of codes. Now, this is a quotation from two evolutionists. The inheritance of epigenetic variations is a direct challenge to the evolutionary synthesis. And this is the sort of thing that's being said behind closed doors. The neo-Darwinian synthesis is not adequate to explain these findings because it just deals with very small changes in the DNA itself. And these are complex information layers. You see, you can see where it's at. It just doesn't work. Now, that doesn't mean to say that evolution will be dropped. It won't. They will come out with a new synthesis of some sort. But this is what I believe, that Ray, Linnaeus and Mendel were pursuing a very fruitful path, and Darwinism brought it to a halt. What is needed now is for it to be resumed. That was the fruitful path, when they based their view of biology on a creationist, a biblical framework. And so much time has been wasted trying to squeeze the amazing findings of modern cell biology and genetics into a Darwinian mould. For Darwinism to be true, it needs to be able to explain everything to do with life without reference to a designer and in terms of random inheritable changes. So let's just finish by going to what will probably be the final hurdle for evolution, to account for consciousness. I'm not departing from the theme because genes have got to be able to explain consciousness. A final word, if genes are all we are, which is what Dawkins basically believes, isn't it? Selfish genes are what it's all about. A final word from John Maynard Smith, spoken in 2001. See, his honesty again. I have no way of explaining consciousness. It is entirely inexplicable and mysterious. He died in 2004.